two unidentified women. It's really hard to find very many pictures of the women and children. I found a few, but you know, again, they don't get the attention that the men do in most of the official records and stuff. But just to give you an idea how they dressed, and they're wearing, they're really dressed rather fancy, and they have on these ribbon work shawls, and they still wear and use these designs today. This is Richard Whitehorse, Sungay Ika. He was also known as Missouria chief. He was the last, considered the last full-blooded Missouri that led the tribe. He was born in 1826, the son of Aha Chisaka, which I think may be another rendering of the Hachikisaga, the guy whose painting that we saw. But I have to work on that to be sure. But two pictures of him. In this one, you can see he's wearing a very elaborately beaded outfit that has a lot of floral designs and patterns. This shows a connection where they originally came from, the Great Lakes area in Wisconsin. See, they didn't just discard all this stuff. These traditions carried on, so that even though by this time they've been living out in the plains and in contact with Plains Indians for years, some of those woodland elements going back hundreds of years, they still brought, they still kept, and they still use. Here he is here in a little bit different garb a few years later. This is his son, Soje Inga Little Smoke, or Charles Washington Daly. Two pictures of 1896 and then 07. And on the buffalo hunt in 1874 or 6, depending on which record you believe, at the age of 6 or 7, he accompanied the last tribal buffalo hunt, and he left his nephew a very good description of that buffalo hunt and what they did to prepare for it and stuff. It made such a lasting impression on him. So he was one of the last Missourians to actually participate in any way on a buffalo hunt as a child. This is his brother, George Washington Daly, Strasagi, Old Eagle, and I'm probably pronouncing the names wrong. It's the languages are very hard for me to pronounce, and you just have to be around those folks quite a bit to get a good sense of how to say the names properly. But he's also the son of Whitehorse, and this is a picture of him on Rock, his horse. And I know his granddaughter, and I met with her and visited with her several times, and she told me about it and says, well, she saw that picture and she says, well, that's old Rock. So she remembered that horse, which is pretty neat. And this is George's son, Truman Daly, Mashimane, Soaring High of the Missouri Eagle clan. And he was also called Whitehorse after his grandfather. See, again, they had several names, so he went by both. He was one of the last fluent speakers of the Missouria language, and actually, before he passed away, he helped University of Missouri with a language project and was given an honorary doctorate degree about 1994, just before he died. Picture of him as a small child, 1908. This is a picture of him at Disneyland. Disneyland, you know, had Frontierland, and they had Indian Village and Frontierland, and he worked there for almost 10 years in the 1950s, early 1960s, and played the part of Chief Whitehorse. And, you know, some people think, oh, you know, that's kind of condescending, that's not very good. But he actually had a very different philosophy about that, because he said this was an opportunity for him to tell people what Indians were really like. Because, you know, in the 50s and 60s, when you turned on Disney's Wonderful World on Sunday night, what did you see? You saw Bess Parker shooting Indians, right? And stuff. And Truman saw working at Disneyland as a way way to reach people and help them really understand what American Indians were like, and that they weren't all about going out and killing settlers and things like that. There was a lot deeper things to the culture, so he really enjoyed it, working out there. And I got to meet him very, very briefly at the dedication of the Van Meter Visitor Center. So, and he served in the tribal government numerous times, different roles. And he's partially responsible for the name of the tribe today, which is Oto, Missouria. He said he and some of the other Missouri boys said, you know, we got to have a little bit of name recognition too. You know, we're part of this tribal community, so the tribe name was changed to the Oto, Missouria from Oto in the 1950s. We've had Oto, Missouria elders come up and visit us here in 2009, October. I got to give a tour for a couple of days to a group of the elders and got to meet and visit with them and shared with them the research for the book and so forth. This is us out on the old fort in Van Meter State Park. That's Dr. Ray Wood from the MU Department of Archaeology, retired. And here we are in the Arrow Rock Visitor Center, and here we are in the Van Meter Visitor Center. And there we are, group picture out at the Dalton site. When William Clark was coming up the river, up past Glasgow there in the Dalton Bottoms, he wrote that there was formerly an ancient village of the Missouris here. So the National Park Service took an interest. Jim Harlan from MU Archaeology went out and based on Clark's measurements and ratings said if there's anything here, it'd be right here. So they came out, and lo and behold, there was no surface excavation, but ground penetrating radar revealed what for all intents and purposes looks like an Indian village. Now, without actually excavating, we're not sure, but it's very, very promising. The Oto, Missouria elders came out and they actually were really keenly interested because most of them had never been to their homeland before, and it was very emotional for them to come to a place that they realized that their ancestors had been. That's me back there with the woolly beard and all with them. But I had a lot of fun and met with them. This little lady here, Lorena DeRoy, was the oldest member of the tribe at that time, and she made this very impromptu, impassioned speech for the need to pass on your heritage, your culture, your traditions to future generation, because they're very, very worried about losing things, because so many of the kids, you know, they grow up, they get out, and, you know, they get into MTV and electronic stuff just like everything. So the elders there of the Oto, Missouria are very concerned about continued loss of the language and what traditions that they have. But at the same time, I find that the Oto, Missouria, they're very proud of their heritage. The Missouris are not extinct. There are still families in Red Rock, Oklahoma that identify themselves not as Otos, but as Missourians. And one gentleman I met in Red Rock, he pointedly told me, he said, I'm a Missourian, not an Oto. He says, that's where my father's clan heritage comes from, is through the Missouria side. So they're not extinct. And I said, so if anybody says, oh, the Missouris are extinct, no, they're not. They're still with us. They still honor their traditions. This is the Oto, Missouria tribal seal. This is the remaining clan. Several of the clans have become extinct over the years. This is the pigeon, which, you know, that represents passenger pigeon. The owl, the elk, the buffalo, the beaver, the eagle, and the bear. And, you know, they still have a lot of dances and ceremonies that very much bind them together as a people. So, if you want to know more, there's the book, and I've got it for sale up there. And again, it's just a lot of you know, I marveled at some of the information that I found. I'm still uncovering information. It's just been ferreted away in various French and Spanish archives and hidden away here and there. And so I'm actually the first person that I know of that's ventured to even put this information out. And I had, like I said, there were several of the Odo Missouria elders that talked to me and shared with me about their culture and what they knew. So, and that always helped me to have some perspective, because too often, you know, people write a book and they don't talk to the people that they're writing about. So that's very much the case, and I didn't want to do that, so I didn't share it with. So that concludes my presentation. I guess I got time for a few questions.